Have you ever been treated like background noise? Invisible, always wrong, permanently on the receiving end of someone else's thunder? He yelled at me while I folded his shirts. He told me he should have married my cousin. I smiled, kept folding, and then I started adding a little extra to every load. By morning, he was the one waking up to a body he didn't recognize, and by the end of the month, our marriage was quietly over. If you love stories where the smallest detail becomes a weapon of justice, hit like, subscribe, and stay, because this is one of those quiet revenge stories that burns slow and lands perfectly. There are moments in life you remember, not because they were loud, but because they were simple. A word, a gesture, a small routine repeating until it snaps the last thread of your patience. This is one of those stories. I grew up in a house so full of cousins and noise that silence felt foreign. Weekends were loud with arguments, laughter, songs, and comparisons. Aunties asking who finished first in class, who married well, who had the better job, who always seemed to be falling behind. We were a pack that learned early how to wear other people's opinions like secondhand clothes, itchy and ill-fitting. I learned to smile in the middle of discomfort. It became a reflex. When I met Mark, he had the perfect kind of charm you wear like cologne. Pleasant, noticeable, slightly addictive. On dates, he was all attention. Eyebrows raising at my stories, hands finding mine in crowded restaurants, little notes hidden among flowers. I thought, for a time, that perhaps I'd finally found someone who'd cover the parts of me I'd always felt needed covering. And for a while, he did. Until the charm thinned and a different sound took its place, the sound of entitlement. Let me describe him so you understand the gravity of the tiny things he did. Mark liked things ordered by scale of his own importance. Conversations were platforms for him to display his knowledge. If he walked into a room, he expected it to adjust, like gravity bending for him. He criticized with the precision of someone who rehearsed disappointment. He had a habit of comparing people to everyone else, to exes, to friends, to cousins, to satellites of his attention. And when he compared, he always positioned me on the losing side of his invisible scorecard. He also had allergies, real allergies, dust, grass, certain detergents. He would break out in sneezes that sounded theatrical, like a man trying to win sympathy on stage. The allergies were inconvenient for both of us because they required accommodations, explanations, and, most damaging, a platform for his martyrdom. He used them like a shield and a scepter. He was both fragile and royal. He believed his discomfort entitled him to lectures about how I managed the household, as if my life had been made only to serve his nasal passages. We married. We moved into a small house with a laundry room that smelled clean and faintly of cedar because I kept a sachet in the dryer. Before we married, he insisted on strict laundry rules. Wash my shirts separately, he said. No fabric softeners, no strong detergent. My skin reacts. I complied. I asked his mother once which products she used, and she shrugged and said, I don't use them because he breaks out. He refused to accept that answer because accepting a mother's truth would mean admitting he'd been wrong all his life. He always preferred to be right. For a while, the rules were a ritual, and rituals can be comforting. I ritualized my day around his comfort. Separate loads, specific detergent, shirts turned inside out. I learned which towel would make him complain if it touched his face. I learned to fold his clothes in the exact way he liked. The cuffs aligned, the collar stiff, the shirt smelling like the ghost of a store-bought fresh scent. The ease of it calmed me. Even a little. It felt like being useful in a world that often made me small. Then the complaining turned. It moved from small corrections like wrong fold to a tone that cut deeper. He had become a machine that scanned a room for faults. He complained with the casual cruelty of someone who hates vulnerability so much he inflicts it on others. He would pick an insignificant mistake and turn it into proof of incompetence. He favored lines that compared me to other women, to cousins, to anyone who could be framed as superior. We argued sometimes. Mostly his voice rose like steam escaping from a kettle. I learned what it felt like to dissolve into silence. I learned how to make myself small so the shouting would stop. I smiled and nodded so often I developed an internal inventory of smiles. The apologetic smile, the distracted smile, the smile that said I was already giving up. The more he accused, the more I learned to retreat. It's an eroding thing, being told you're never enough until you start to believe it. The day that changed everything felt ordinary. I had a small comfort, my laundry rhythm. There's a kind of meditation in the simple cadence of it. Sorting, loading, detergent measured at the lip of a cap, the soft thunk of the dryer door closing. It was late afternoon. The sunlight through the tiny laundry room window was warm, the floor slightly cool beneath my bare feet. I had just transferred a load from the washer to the dryer and was reaching for the next basket when he came in. His entrance was routine now, the slow, predatory step of someone ready to find fault. He had a complaint lined up like a ready cigarette, something small that would get him started. He spoke in that dry, certain voice, the one that implied he had cataloged my mistakes and placed each on a shelf labeled evidence. You didn't separate my shirts. You used the wrong cycle. Why is my shirt still damp? I said the things I'd been taught to say, small, calm noises designed to smooth waves. I smiled because smiling here meant survival. I kept working, sorting towels, folding, listening to the hum of the machines. I had tuned out most of his criticisms over the years. They had become a mechanical background. But then he said something I will always remember because it hit with mathematical cruelty, precise, casual, deliberate. Honestly, he said, like flipping a page, I should have married your cousin instead of you. It was shorter than a slap, but harder. It took more force than any argument he'd launched before. It wasn't an accusation about dishes or the wrong detergent. It was a full-throated comparison that erased my worth and put someone else on a pedestal, someone from the family whose flaws and successes I had always been measured against. The sentence wasn't about love. It was an instrument designed to hurt where it would bleed the most. He didn't aim to start a fight. He intended to wound and move on. My hands stopped folding. The towel I held pinched in my grip. A strange thing happened. My body went simultaneously numb and electric. My stomach tightened like a fist, then released a slow, seething heat that rose behind my ribcage. Everything inside me lined up. Old memories, belittlements, every not good enough ever said, like an army answering a call. I could have snapped. For a brief, windy second, the idea of turning and screaming and throwing words at him that could not be taken back was appealing. I could have matched his cruelty with my own. But anger is many things, and its best versions are patient. I felt something else rise, a cool, measured resolve. Not the reckless, messy revenge you see in movies. Quiet, precise, personal. Behind the little cabinet over the washer sat a collection of dryer sheet boxes. 5 brands, different colors, different marketing promises. Ocean breeze, mountain fresh, pure comfort. He had purchased them himself. He'd insisted on the softest clothes in the world. It was an odd obsession for a man who claimed allergies. He would sniff, rub his eyes, and then insist he preferred that one scent his mother used. His assertions always carried that tone, as if being right was a posture that required no proof. The dryer sheet boxes were almost comical sitting there, neon promises of softness. Every time he used them, he would have a reaction, a chorus of sniffling and itchy skin. He'd blame the season, the office, the neighbor's cat. He refused to admit cause and effect. He refused the simplest accountability. He reveled in being wronged by the universe and, in turn, made me responsible for fixing it. Standing there, towel in hand, I made a quiet decision. Not dramatic, not cinematic, deliberate. If he enjoyed making me small, then I would make his world carry a truth he denied. I would not shout. I would not lace threats. I would place something small, persistent, and unavoidable into the fabric of his everyday life. I started with a handful of Ocean Breeze, a small theatrical handful, 6 sheets that melted and folded into cotton like secret confetti. I slipped them into the dryer just as I closed the door. He watched me. He didn't say anything, which was the strangest part. He thought whatever he wanted in his head, that I was incompetent, that I was slow, that I was inattentive. But in his mind, I wasn't a strategist. I was just background. What I began was a deliberate campaign, a soft mortar of scent and irritation that I would build one load at a time. I alternated brands, I mixed scents, I made sure the sheets clung. Bed sheets got 2 handfuls, pajama loads got extra. Towels that touched his face received the most generous portions. My moves were small and banal in the moment, but accumulation is a subtle kind of revenge. The first night was almost anticlimactic. He pulled on his pajamas, smiling in that practiced way that assumes a world still owes him comfort. The room smelled like a retail display of clean. I lay awake for a while, listening. The first cough. The throat clearing that sounded like someone trying to move a lump of discomfort down through a narrow throat. Then the scratching. Little, intermittent, like the scratching of a record needle searching for a track. He blamed everything. He blamed the weather. He blamed the neighbor's flowers. The symphony of excuses grew louder as weeks passed. He went to the doctor and got told the usual: seasonal allergies, maybe a mild dermatitis. He bought antihistamines by the bottle and took them with the smug certitude of someone who insists the world is against him. He purchased an expensive air purifier and set it up in our bedroom with the same pride someone shows after climbing a small hill. He believed he had fought nature, and for now, it had complied. But I kept adding sheets. This wasn't some gleeful, gory revenge. It was intimate and bureaucratic. There's a particular satisfaction in toggling between loads, watching the dryer drum turn, listening to the gentle slap of cloth. I would stand at the machine, breathe in the scent I'd placed like a personal watermark, and catalog the changes in him. He began to look worn, puffy under the eyes, jaw tight with the small irritations that turn a person inward. He would come home complaining of headaches, of a throat like a desert. He cried once, not to me, but to his mother on the phone. A sliver of vulnerability he hid because revealing it to me would be admitting my centrality in his life, which he couldn't afford. The revenge grew teeth of its own because he kept denying its cause. Imagine being the person who furtively tries to adjust the thermostat and being told you are imagining the cold. He refused to see the tie between his scratching hands and the soft, perfumed linens in his drawers. He insisted on being the innocent, wronged party of his own life narrative. That denial tasted like honey. It made his complaint sweeter to me because every plea was an admission of discomfort with no target. He blamed everything and everyone but the one person whose hands rearranged his universe each week. There were moments when guilt would flicker across my chest, brief, shameful darts. I am not proud of lying or cruelty. I am, however, proud of reclaiming myself. The small guilt outweighed years of being made small. This was not about habitually hurting someone. It was about an action that stood in for a voice I had been denied. Each dryer sheet folded into his shirts was a sentence I had not been permitted to say aloud. It was quiet, but it was mine. Night after night, I listened to the slow, human music of his discomfort. I listened without glee, and with the strange private relief of someone waking up from a long, dark dream.
The sound of him sneezing and scratching became a recording of my liberation. It was absurdly domestic, this liberation folded into pillowcases and sweaters, polite and fragrant, but what it lacked in spectacle, it made up for in permanence. The months blurred. Our marriage, weakened by 1,000 small cuts, finally gave. Not with a courtroom scene or a dramatic accusation, but with a series of small differences that could no longer be reconciled. He called me distant. I called him hypocritical in the privacy of friends' ears. We stopped meeting in the middle of each evening. He moved out quietly, claiming space the way someone removes an appliance, efficient and slightly embarrassed. After he left, the house felt different. For the first time in years, I could let a shirt dry with any scent I wanted. I stopped measuring my utility by whether his socks were folded correctly. The small cabinet above the washer remained full of boxes for a while. I pulled them down now and then and smiled. Not viciously, just gently. The smell of pure comfort used to be a reminder of the daily compromise I'd made. Now it was a relic, a talisman of the line I had finally drawn. People ask me, sometimes with curiosity and sometimes with judgment, was it worth it? Here's the honest answer. It wasn't about hurting him. It wasn't about gloating while he suffered. It was about the reclamation of a person I had been told I could not be. The dryer sheets were an instrument, yes, but they were also an act of assertion. I wrote my sentence in perfumed paper and placed it in the pockets of his shirts. I made sure he smelled the cost of his words every time he dressed. Years later, I still get that twinge when I walk past the laundry aisle in a store. I'll pause and breathe in the packaged promises. Most people catch a smell and think of their mother's towels or their childhood bed. I smile because it reminds me of a quiet justice, a private ritual where a small woman reclaimed her voice without raising it. Revenge stories don't have to be dramatic to be righteous. There's a type of justice that's gentle, cumulative, and earned. It doesn't leave monuments or viral videos. It leaves a different kind of trace, a memory that smells like lavender and makes you feel steady in your bones when you remember it. I'm not proud of making another human uncomfortable, but I am proud that I stopped letting myself be stepped on one comparison at a time. If the lesson is anything, it's this. Power is often hidden in the things you are told to do. Folded inside daily tasks are choices. Not all of them are explosive. Some are small, patient, and permanent. Some are the difference between enduring and emerging. The final act wasn't a confrontation. It didn't require a loud reveal. The payoff was in the small moments. The night he woke up itching and realized the world didn't always bend for him. The day he called his mother and could not blame anyone else. The week he purchased medicines for problems that only his own choices prolonged. The moment I felt the most vindicated was not when he left. It was later, alone, in the quiet laundry room, when I opened the cabinet and there were no boxes left. The last scent faded, and with it, the last of the slow tether that held me small. I cleaned the cabinet, folded the last sheet, and closed the door on a life I had outgrown. Revenge isn't a universal good, but sometimes the quietest, smallest acts are the ones that return your life to you. I didn't break him. I didn't humiliate him on social media. I simply stopped being a passive presence in my own story. That felt like enough. If this story landed with you, hit like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, what small, quiet moment made you feel like you reclaimed something that once felt lost? Share the story. The best ones are the softest.